When the sun rose over ancient Rome, over 1 million people woke up in the city with no electricity, no running water in their homes, and no alarm clocks. If you lived in the capital of the Roman Empire, your entire day was dictated by light, social hierarchy, and an aggressive race against time before nightfall. The day did not start with a slow coffee. It began at first light, roughly 6 in the morning depending on the season. For the average Roman living in a dark, timber-framed apartment building called an insula, waking up meant stepping immediately into danger. These buildings were structurally unstable, prone to sudden fires, and completely unheated. You slept fully dressed in your tunic, wrapped in a heavy wool cloak to survive the cold air. There was no private bathroom. If you had to relieve yourself in the middle of the night, you used a clay pot in the corner of your single cramped room. In the morning, you had a choice. You could walk down 5 flights of narrow wooden stairs to empty it in a street bath, or you could dump it directly out the window into the alley below. This was common enough that Roman law specifically had a legal code covering injuries caused by thrown waste. Breakfast was short and cold. A piece of coarse wheat bread dipped in water or watered-down wine, perhaps an olive or a scrap of hard cheese. The Romans did not eat large meals in the morning. Food was fuel to get you out into the street as fast as possible. By 7 in the morning, the city was at a chaotic pitch. Roman law bans heavy commercial wagons in the city streets during daylight hours to prevent total gridlock. This meant every goods deliverer, construction worker, and trader had to unload before dawn, leaving the morning streets packed end to end with pedestrians, street vendors, and livestock. If you were a wealthy Roman patrician, your morning began with a political show of force called the salutatio. As a patron, your front doors were thrown open to reveal your atrium. Dozens of lower-class citizens, known as your clients, lined up outside your house. These clients depended on you for legal protection, financial gifts, or scraps of food. In exchange, they offered your votes, carried your messages, and walked behind you through the city to make you look powerful. For 2 hours, you greeted each client, handed out small coins or baskets of food, and settled local disputes. The more people following you out into the street afterwards, the higher your social standing. If you were an average worker, a plebeian, your morning was spent earning a living. Roman jobs were hyper-specialized. You weren't just a craftsman. You were a cobbler, making specifically sandals, or a baker, specializing only in coarse barley loaves, or a fuller, whose job was cleaning wool tunics using aged human urine collected from public vats. The ammonia in the urine acted as a natural bleaching agent, making it one of the most crucial industrial liquids in the city. Work in Rome was intense, but it was surprisingly short. The traditional Roman workday lasted only about 6 hours, ending right around noon. Rome was not an economy driven by modern corporate hours. Once the sun reached its peak, the city effectively shut down. At midday, Romans ate a light lunch, usually cold meats, fruit, and more bread. Then came the shift that defines Roman civilization. The entire city transitioned from work to public leisure. Between 1 and 2 in the afternoon, almost the entire free population moved toward the public baths, or thermae. Places like the baths of Carcacello were not just places to wash. They were massive, magnificent public complexes that held thousands of people at a time. Admission was virtually free, subsidized by the state or rich politicians looking for public favor. Inside, rich and poor stood in the same spaces. You started in the palestra, an open courtyard where you wrestled, lifted stones, or played ball games to sweat. Then you entered the apoditorium to strip naked. From there, you moved through a sequence of heated rooms. First, the tepidarium, a warm room to adjust to the heat. Next was the caldarium, a massive steam room heated from below by underground furnaces managed by enslaved laborers. Without soap, Romans cleaned themselves using olive oil. A bath attendant or an enslaved servant rubbed olive oil over your skin, scraping away the sweat, dirt, and dead skin cells using a curved metal tool called a strigil. Afterwards, you plunged into a frigidarium, a cold pool to close your pores. The baths functioned as the city's living room. People conducted business, made political deals, listened to poets read their work, bought fast food from vendors selling fried fish and roasted chickpeas, and gossiped about the imperial court. If it was a festival day, and there were over 150 official holidays on the Roman calendar every year, the afternoon was spent at the spectacles. Over 100,000 people packed into the Circus Maximus to bet on violent chariot races, where drivers were dragged to death beneath overturned carts. At the Colosseum, thousands gathered to watch gladiatorial combat, public executions, and exotic animal hunts. These events were free to the public, funded by the emperor to keep the massive urban population fed, distracted, and obedient. By 5 or 6 in the afternoon, as the sun began to drop, the main event of the day arrived, the cena, or dinner. For the vast majority of Romans who could not afford a kitchen in their wooden apartments, dinner meant stopping at a popina or a thermopolium. These were ancient fast food counters built directly into the street, featuring stone counters with built-in clay jars holding hot stews, lentils, salted fish, and wine. You ate standing up or sitting on a bench in a noisy, crowded tavern, washing down cheap grain with cheap spiced wine. For the wealthy, dinner was a multi-hour spectacle. Reclining on low couches arranged in a U-shape around the low table, guests were served multi-course meals. They ate with their fingers, served by enslaved house staff who brought damp towels between courses. They ate dormice fattened in jars, roasted wild boar, peacock eggs, and fish sauce called garum, a salty fermented liquid made from fish intestines that Romans poured over almost every dish. As night fell, Rome transformed into a completely different city. Rome had no streetlights. When the sun went down, total darkness swallowed the alleys. The wealthy moved through the dark accompanied by enslaved torchbearers and armed bodyguards. For an ordinary person walking home alone, the streets were terrifyingly dangerous. Criminals, muggers, and gang members operated with near impunity, and falling into open construction pits or being hit by falling debris was a constant threat. Most Romans simply went home before total dark. Inside the apartment blocks, lighting an oil lamp was a fire hazard, and olive oil for fuel cost money. Families crawled back into their wool cloaks in the pitch-black rooms, listening to the heavy supply wagons finally rolling through the cobblestone streets below. An ancient Roman day was defined by extreme contrasts. Extreme physical labor in the morning, followed by grand public leisure in the afternoon. Deep class divides, yet shared public spaces. Constant risk, offset by state-funded entertainment. When you closed your eyes in the dark of an insula, you rested for a few short hours, knowing that at the first sign of dawn, the relentless cycle of the capital of the world would start all over again.